Touch from Balthazar Koremacher. It's a romance film about an elderly man longing for his first love 50 years later. This movie is based on the Icelandic novel Touch. The author of the book also helped write the story for the screen. We follow a man named Christopher. He's a lonely old widower whose time left in the world is uncertain. In his solitude, he remembers Miko, the first woman to ever capture his heart many years ago, and he decides to set out searching for her. During his travels, he reflects on that period in his life when he was a student and an employee at the Japanese restaurant where he and Miko met, recalling the times they shared before she suddenly disappeared. This is a really tender love story, but at its core, it's a story about unfinished business. It's about the feeling that you have a loose end looming over you that you've never been able to tie off. In the category of romance, it's about the one that got away and a burning desire to find them. Christopher is so determined to find Miko that he drops everything and flies out to London, looking past all the obstacles in his way and disregarding all of the obligations in his life. Memories are a big part of the film. Not only is it a recurring topic, but the bulk of the film is made up of Christopher's memories. Most of what we see in this movie takes place in the past, it then periodically returns to the present, showing us the progress he's made searching for Miko. So we mostly see young Christopher and his experience working at the Japanese restaurant that was owned by Miko's father. Some of the flashbacks are followed by scenes in the present that relate in some way, making these separate time periods feel somewhat intertwined. For example, he'll be visiting an old friend in the present right after a flashback of him interacting with that person. It's a really beautiful way to tell this story because the two time periods show a drastic but ironic shift in character. In the past, he was young, naive, and a little bit lost while falling in love. Now he's older, wiser, and not lost, but wandering in search of the love that he lost. So this movie is carried by 3 points of anticipation. The first is obviously Christopher finding Miko in the present. The second is the kindling of their relationship in the past. But the third is figuring out what happened between them that led him to be longing for her all these years later. The reason they parted ways isn't explained up front, so that's one of the big things the movie leaves you eager to figure out leading up to the climax. Another interesting thing that looms over this movie is the health concern that Christopher has. It's the thing that leads him to go on this journey in the first place. It's interesting because while some viewers might see its lack of recurrence as a shortcoming, it was actually a really clever creative choice. It gives us the same perception of it that Christopher himself has. It seems to matter a lot less to him than the outcome of his journey. His health all but doesn't matter to him, and in the same vein, the film wants us to see that it's a concern, but disregard it as well. So COVID is actually a big part of the movie. It's never explicitly stated to be COVID, but it checks all the boxes, and I think we can put 2 and 2 together. It's really the biggest obstacle standing in his way because he's traveling as the world starts to shut down and regulations get tighter and tighter. There's a bit of irony here because there's so much anticipation in him meeting up back with Miko and picking up where they left off. Seeing how they are in the past and seeing their physical affection naturally sets the expectation to see them rebuild that dynamic. But we're left wondering what that will look like considering the stress put on people getting in close proximity of each other because COVID. So this movie does have some romance film cliches like love at first sight when it's probably just infatuation and some tropes that veer into borderline soap opera territory. But it doesn't feel nearly as sappy here because the movie sort of qualifies itself to use them with very unique twists. For example, rather than Christopher and Miko immediately pursuing each other when they start working together, it actually takes quite some time for their romance to start to kindle. This movie takes its time getting there by first giving you reasons to want to see them together. It builds the potential for romance through meaningful connections first. It doesn't make the amateur mistake of assuming that the audience will be satisfied with them getting together solely because he's an attractive guy and she's an attractive girl. They obviously find each other fetching very quickly here, but more importantly, they qualify each other through their experiences together, eventually leading it into a romance. I wasn't in love with the ending. I'm not saying that it's a bad one by any means, but it felt like there could have been one more scene to reset the vibe. It just didn't feel like the right note to end it on. But nevertheless, this movie is a really charming take on first love. Its intercultural dynamics and senior characters give it much needed fresh traits that make it feel like a novel experience. It's a lovely film that paints a clear picture that you're never too old to be spellbound by the thought of love and chasing the things you most desire. Overall, it's a beautiful and tender story that is sure to please anyone who's ever asked the question, what if? I'll say it, the movie's pretty incredible. It is definitely worth watching if you're in the mood for a film that will pull on your heartstrings. I think it's a great movie for people of all ages, but it might be a little bit better for older viewers just because it might not be quite as relatable for younger viewers. And of course, if stories carried by the outcome of a potential romance don't sound like your cup of tea, then there's really nothing for you in this movie. Thank you for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please give it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you later this week with my reviews of Dee Dee and Deadpool and Wolverine.